Hello, crafty friends. Welcome back to Jessie Kate Creates. I'm Jessica, and in today's video, we are going to use some small stamps with big impact to create this clean and simple birthday card. So I'm going to be using this Sprinkles Turnabout stamp set from Concord and Night, and I am just focusing on these adorable cupcakes in the stamp set. I really like them because they layer. So there's the wrappers, the frosting, and even some really cute sprinkles to go on top. So of course you could replace these cupcakes with hearts, balloons, maybe some cute little critters, whatever you need for your cards. So I've added the cupcakes to my Misty, and I'm going to be stamping these down on scraps of 100-pound cardstock that I just have in my stash and need to use up. So first, I'm going to make myself a template by stamping the cupcakes down with some VersaFine black ink, and this is for two reasons. One, I'm going to be stamping these cupcakes in a lighter ink, so this is going to make it a lot easier for me to line up the layering images on these stamps. Also, I ended up doing this project over the course of a couple days, so having the template just made it easier to line things up. Now I'm going to add the paper to my Misty, and I don't know if this is something you guys ever struggle with, but the paper I'm using is not completely square. So to make sure it stamps in the same place every single time, you saw me align the paper to the bottom of my Misty and then scoot it over to the side. And I do that with every single piece of paper like you see me doing here to make sure that this stamps exactly where I want it, since I know these scraps are not completely square. Okay, so I'm just going through and stamping out all of my cupcakes into some light gray ink, and then we'll color them and we'll stamp them on top again with black ink. And it just gives it a really nice crisp look when you do it that way. So I've stamped out all my cupcakes over to the side. I am leaving the outline of the cupcake in my Misty. I'm not touching it yet because we're gonna need it again later. So now I'm bringing in my template, and I'm going to use this to line up the wrappers for my cupcakes. Now, I'm going to speed this up here, but this is a step where you want to take your time anytime you're using a layering stamp, especially if you're making multiples like I am. It is worth it to take a few extra minutes to get these lined up how you want them, so that they stamp exactly how you want them to stamp. Because if these are misaligned here, it's going to be misaligned on every image that you stamp. And I really want to avoid that. So I just took a few minutes to make sure I had those lined up exactly how I want them, and then I will pick them up with my Misty. To stamp all of the cupcake wrappers, I'm going to use Concord and Night's wheat ink. It's just a nice light color that I thought would work really well for these. And as I'm looking at these, I'm starting to wonder, are these supposed to be cupcakes, or is this supposed to be like icing? Or not icing, but like ice cream. Like, doesn't it kind of look like the froyo you get a little bit? Maybe that's just me. I don't know. I guess you could use it either way. Okay, so for the wrappers, I decided it would be nice to add a little bit of dimension by creating a shadow under the cupcake. So I'm just angling my stamp or my ink pad so that I can get ink just on that upper edge of the wrapper. And then I'm bringing in a blending brush just to soften it so that there's not a harsh line. And you'll see when I stamp this down, it adds a nice little bit of shadow just right under the cupcake. And since this card is so clean and simple, I thought this would be a nice detail to add. Of course, you could skip this step. You don't have to do that if that's a little too fussy for you, or if you like to keep your stamping super simple. These are still going to look great even if you don't add that shadow. And here I just wanted to show you on one of these, I forgot to use my blending brush, this one on the right. So you can see it has a little bit of a harsher line, but it still works fine. And I think on the final card, no one's really going to pay attention to that. So now that I stamped all the wrappers, it's time to do the frosting. So I got those lined up, and I'm just going to bring in all my cupcakes and stamp those down. Now I decided to use a variety of colors for this. You could use whatever you want. You could keep it all the same. I think it could be really fun to do like a monochrome palette where maybe you just use different shades of pink or blue or, whatever color that you want. So when I was making these cards, it was cold outside. It's really, I live in Virginia, so it only gets so cold. But I'm I'm not a huge fan of cold weather. I'd much prefer to be warm. So it's getting to the point now where I'm just so ready for spring, especially because last year I started my first garden and I'm excited to do it again this year. And I'm actually looking forward to starting some of my plants from seed, which is a little scary and exciting all at the same time. So it's getting to the point where it's about time to start getting things ready. And I'm just itching for spring so bad. So I decided for this card I was going to use bright, springy colors. Hence all of the bright pinks and greens and blues. I even think I bring in a nice bright orange because I'm just so ready to be out of all of this cold to me weather and into the warmth of spring and summer. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and stamp out all of those cupcakes. And I hope you guys can see here that the gray ink is really light and it does make it a little bit harder to see and a little bit harder to line up. So I'm definitely glad I created that template for myself. It was just a lot easier on my eyes when I was lining things up. So now that I have all the cupcakes stamped out, it is time to color in the actual cupcake itself. There's not a stamp in the set for this, so I just decided to use my alcohol markers. So I decided I wanted some vanilla cupcakes and some chocolate cupcakes. So I just went to my stash and grabbed some alcohol inks that I thought together would work to make a nice little, vanilla cupcake. And I'm just laying the darker color on the edges and then blending it all out with the lighter color. And that's my vanilla cupcakes. Now, if you're not into Copic markers, you don't have to use Copic markers. You could use, coloring pencils. You could use watercolors, whatever medium you prefer, go ahead and use that. For the chocolate cupcake, it's the same thing. I decided to grab a darker brown and a lighter kind of more milk chocolatey brown. And you'll notice that I have a Copic marker and I have some other random marker. And that's because when I first was getting into alcohol markers, I did not want to spend $8 a marker on something I wasn't sure if I would even like. So I got a cheaper set of alcohol markers, I think from Tuesday Morning, just to try them out and to see, is this even anything I like? And then once I realized I do like alcohol ink and I do like coloring with alcohol markers, then I've slowly been investing into Copics, but I really don't have that many Copic markers. So my collection of alcohol markers is just a hodgepodge of a lot of different things. But of course, use whatever it is that you have in your stash and whatever medium that you prefer. So we've colored in all of our cupcakes. And now we are going to stamp the outline onto the cupcakes. So remember, we left the outline in place. So these are going to line up in the exact same place. And now we are going to start stamp this black ink on the top of all of the cupcakes. And it just really pops and brings the cupcakes to life. It also, with the alcohol markers, if you messed up with any of the coloring, it kind of clears some of that up. Now you might be wondering why I didn't just stamp it in black, color them, and then stamp it in black again. On the top, I stamped in gray first, colored everything in, and then stamped in black. On the bottom, I stamped in black, colored everything in, and stamped in black again. And you'll notice when you double stamp in black, you get a kind of thicker black outline, which looks fine, but I just prefer the way the cupcakes look on top. And so that's what I decided to do. But of course, do whatever works for you and whatever is comfortable for you. So I've gone ahead and stamped the outlines onto all of my cupcakes. And I am going to add the sprinkles, but I need the black ink to dry first. So I'm going to go ahead and set those aside and work on the rest of the card. So here I just have an A2 top folding card base. And I've gone ahead and cut down some white panels of 80-pound cardstock that are 5 inches by 3 3/4 inches. So we have a nice 1/4 inch border all the way around our card. And I just did a couple of those panels because, like I said, I decided I was going to make a whole bunch of these cards while I was here. So for the sentiment on this card, we're going to use this Happy Birthday to You from the Lawn Fawn Scripty Sayings stamp set. I get so much use out of this stamp set. You've probably seen it in other videos because I really like it and I like all the different sentiments in it. So I've just gone ahead and lined up that stamp in my Misty And because it extends beyond my paper, I kind of pushed it over to the side. And I'm just using my gel pen to make a dot on my MISTI of where I need to line up my cardstock each time so that the sentiment stamps in the right place. That's just easier for me than having to continually remember to put it at the ½ inch mark, because me being me, I will inevitably forget. So that's just a little cheat code I like to use sometimes when I'm using my MISTI. So I've gone ahead and treated my cardstock with some baby powder so that it will help with any static. And I'm stamping it down with some sticky ink, and I'm going to pour some gold embossing powder over top of this. I just use the Recollections detail embossing powder. Again, use whatever it is you have in your stash. I'm going to tap off the excess, and then I'm going to melt this down with my heat tool. Oh, of course, I'm going to wipe off any little excess bits. I had my heat tool getting hot off camera probably for, I don't know, 2 or 3 minutes to help prevent some of the warping to the cardstock, and also just to make sure that I melt my powder without burning it. And once I've done that, you can see we have this lovely gold heat embossed sentiment. And I just did that to my whole stock, or my whole stack of panels. It's probably more than I needed, but now I have them on hand. Okay, so now it's time for the sprinkles. We are going to gold heat emboss these as well, which is why I needed that black ink to be dry first. So again, I'm just gonna treat the paper with some anti-static powder, stamp down the sprinkles, and I'm going to cover them in gold powder. Now, because I'm really confident I can do quite a few of these in a row before I need to heat emboss them, I'm gonna go ahead and do all 5 panels. I'm going to stamp them, sprinkle them with the powder, but I'm going to wait until I've done all of them to actually bring my heat tool to them and to melt the powder. And that's what I'm doing here. And I can't remember where I saw this, but I saw someone on YouTube, and they just made this, like, they took a shoebox, the lid to a shoebox, covered it in some aluminum foil, and now they have like a heat embossing tray that helps distribute the heat better and keep your paper from warping. So I thought that was a really cool tip, and I've been using it in my craft room and really enjoying it. So now it's time to fussy cut out all of our cupcakes. I don't mind fussy cutting. If you do, I would say maybe stamp your images directly onto your card base, or maybe pick an image that you know you have a die to cut, but I don't have dies for these. So I'm just going to take a little bit of time to fussy cut this. A couple tips here for fussy cutting: go slow. I left this cupcake in so you could see it takes a little bit of time. I think it ends up taking me about 20 seconds to get this cut out, but it's not too hard. So this is the perfect type of thing to do when, you could have a podcast on, maybe watching a movie in the background, on a phone call with a friend. For me, fussy cutting, when I do those things, it can almost be kind of zen, because it gives my hands something to do, while my brain, it can be a little bit more focused on something else. So I personally really enjoy it. But again, if you don't like fussy cutting, stamp the images directly onto your card base, or just pick an image that you have dies to cut out. So there's my cupcake. I'm going to go ahead and cut out all of my other ones, and now we have this fun little rainbow of cupcakes. So it's time to assemble the card. So I'm going to pop these cupcakes up to add some dimension to the card. So I've just gone ahead and put a little bit of foam tape on the back of all of my cupcakes. And now I'm going to decide how I want them laid out on the card. For a while, I thought about just doing them all straight up and down, but I decided the sentiment is really fun and whimsical, so I wanted the cupcakes to be fun and whimsical too. So I just kind of tilted them all. Also, this makes it so much easier because I don't have to worry about perfectly aligning all of the cupcakes, because if they're a little tilted or wonky, they're supposed to be that way. So I just went ahead and added the cupcakes to the panel, and there was a little bit of excess overhanging the sides, so I just went ahead and trimmed that off with my scissors. Then I added foam tape to the back of my panel, and now I'm just going to go ahead and mount that onto my card base. A little tip here, with foam tape, a lot of times once you stick it down, it stays in place. So to give myself more wiggle room, it's kind of like an insurance policy. I put a little bit of glue on the back of the foam tape, and that way I have more time to wiggle things around and get everything lined up perfectly straight, which I definitely needed here because I was struggling a little bit to get this panel straight. Off camera, I just kind of hold it up in front of my face to make sure it looks straight, and then I press everything down, and there we go. We have the front of our card. So I did that for both of these cards, and now we can move on to decorating the inside of the card. So I used my Mink hot foiling machine and my computer to make my own sentiments for these cards, and I just printed them on a laser printer and foiled them with my Mink machine so that they're gold foiled since there's gold on the front of the cards. But of course, you could use any sentiment that you have in your stash. You could just go ahead and stamp it down instead. So I also decided that I was going to add the cupcakes that we used on the front of the card to the inside of the card. That's just a really fun way to tie everything together. So I've picked those stamps up on an acrylic block. I thought it would be a lot easier that way and a lot faster too than trying to line everything up in my MISTI. So I'm just going to stamp those down with some Concord and Ninth Stardust ink. It kind of looks like gold, and since we have gold on the front of the card and the inside of the card, I thought it would be a nice color to use here. Now, since I have my stamps out and my ink out, I decide we're also going to do a quick matching envelope. And you've probably seen me do this before. I really like it as a way to tie everything together. Just whatever stamps you're using on the front of the card, use them on the inside of the card and use them on the envelope as well. And it creates a nice, fun package for your card. So we'll go ahead and stamp that down, and then we will adhere the inserts for the inside of the card onto our card base. Here I'm using a couple dabs of glue again, just so that I have a little bit of wiggle room with getting the this panel into the card. And there we have it. That completes our card. So cute. I really enjoy how these turned out. I think they're really clean and simple and fun and bright and whimsical. I'm just totally my style, and I really like how these turned out. I thought about adding some sequins or gems to these, but in the end I decided I like the way it looks without anything else. It still has some dimension and shine and pops of color, so I decided to leave them just as they are. Now, if this card inspires you to make something similar, I would really love to see what you create. Share your creations on Instagram and tag me. I will have my Instagram handle in the description box below. It's just at Jessie Kate Creates. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you had fun hanging out with me and that this inspires you to get crafty in your own craft room. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!